Gross versus net profit. What really matters? Today we're explaining the difference between gross and net profit, two fundamental concepts that every business owner needs to understand. These numbers tell you whether your business is actually making money or just generating sales. We'll break down what each one means, give you real-world examples of both, and help you understand how one affects the other. The three key numbers. When analyzing any business, there are three core financial metrics. Revenue is the total amount of money your business brings in. If you make 100 items and sell them for $10 each, your revenue is $1,000. This is your top line number and is often viewed as how much money a business makes, but this is before any expenses or costs are subtracted. Gross profit is what remains after you subtract the direct costs of producing your product or service. These direct costs are called cost of goods sold, or COGS for short. If the item costs $4 to make and you sell it for $10, your gross profit is $6 per item, or $600 of the $1,000 in total revenue. Net profit is what's left after all expenses are paid in the business. This includes rents, salaries, insurance, marketing, taxes, and every other cost of running your business. This is the bottom line net profit and is the most important number when evaluating how much money a business actually makes. These numbers are generally represented as a percentage of the total revenue to give a clearer picture of the business health. A practical example. Let's look at a coffee shop to see how these numbers would work in practice. This coffee shop sells 200 cups per day at $4 each. That gives us $800 in daily revenue, or $24,000 per month. The raw ingredients and consumables used to make each cup cost $1.20. This includes beans, milk, cups, lids, and water. So the gross profit per cup is $2.80. Over the month, that's $16,800 in gross profit. To calculate this number as a percentage of the total revenue, we divide the gross profit, $16,800, by the total revenue, $24,000, and we get 0.7, or 70% gross profit margin. But here's where the net profit gets interesting. The business has monthly expenses, which include $4,500 for rent, $5,950 in employee wages, $400 for utilities, $250 for business insurance, $250 for marketing costs, $1,450 in loan and equipment payments, and $400 for supplies. The total operating expenses come out to $13,200 per month. So let's break this down. Total revenue is $24,000. The cost of goods sold is $7,200, or 30% of that number. Gross profit is $16,800, or 70% of the total revenue. Operating expenses come out to $13,200, or 55% of the total revenue number. This gives us a net profit of $3,600 per month, or 15% of the total revenue. Although the gross profit was at 70% of the total revenue, the net profit is only 15% once all expenses in the business are taken into account. Why gross profit matters. Gross profit margin indicates whether your core business model is viable and above, below, or in line with industry standards. It shows what the baseline is for the products you're selling and if you can maintain profitability on the sale of these items if your monthly operating expenses are predictable. Some industry benchmarks. Software. 80 to 90% gross profit margins. These businesses have high margins because the software is developed only once and the cost to serve additional customers is minimal. Restaurants. 60 to 70% gross profit margins. Food costs are relatively low compared to the selling price on the menu. Retail clothing. 50 to 55% gross profit margins. Physical products with manufacturing and material costs plus seasonal risks make this profit margin not as high. Grocery stores. 20 to 25% gross profit margins. These businesses have high volume, low margin business models with perishable inventory and tight competition. If your gross margins are significantly below industry standards, you likely have a pricing or cost structure problem. Why net profit is critical. Net profit determines business survival. You can have excellent gross margins, but still fail if your operating expenses are too high. Looking at the same industries, net profit margins can tell a different story. Software companies can maintain 20 to 30% net profit margins because their operating costs are primarily salaries, technology infrastructure, and marketing and sales. Although food costs are only 30%, restaurants typically only see 3 to 5% net profit margins due to high operational costs such as labor, rent, and equipment expenses. Although their gross profit margins were lower than restaurants, retail clothing businesses can often achieve 5 to 10% net profit margins because they have lower operating costs. Grocery stores usually operate on 1 to 3% net margins because of their high volume, low margin model with significant operational overhead. This example shows both low gross and low net profit margins. Software companies may see significantly fewer transactions, but the products have a much higher net profit margin as compared to selling an apple in a grocery store that has a very low profit margin. Different business models. High volume, low margin. Businesses like grocery stores or gas stations operate on thin margins but high volume. They make small amounts per transaction but process many transactions due to the large customer base. Low volume, high profit margins. Luxury services or specialized products can charge premium prices with fewer customers, and each sale generates a substantial amount of profit. Both models can work but require different strategies and cost structures. Key metrics to track. Gross profit margin percentage. Gross profit divided by revenue. This shows pricing power and cost efficiency. Break-even point. The revenue level where total costs equal the total amount of revenue. Calculate this as fixed costs divided by gross profit per unit. Profit per customer. Net profit divided by the number of customers in a given time period. This shows the true value of each customer relationship. Common mistakes. Focusing only on revenue growth. Increasing sales doesn't automatically increase profit if costs grow proportionally or faster. An example of this would be selling a lot of products that require heavy manufacturing, but you have to buy more manufacturing equipment to produce the increased number of units. Ignoring fixed costs. Many businesses underestimate the impact of rent, insurance, and other fixed expenses that don't change even when revenue dips. Poor cost allocation. Not properly tracking which expenses relate to which products or services, giving you a blurry view of where you're making and/or losing money. Incorrect pricing. Not setting prices correctly can lead to selling items for less than it costs you to make and sell it to the customer. This can lead to businesses essentially paying customers to buy products from them. Understanding the differences between gross and net profit is fundamental to running a successful business. Revenue tells you how much money is coming in, but gross profit shows you whether the core product is viable. And net profit reveals if your entire business model is actually making money. As we saw with the coffee shop example, you can have strong gross profit margins at 70%, but still end up with modest net profits of just 15% once all operating expenses are factored in. This gap between gross and net profit is where many businesses struggle. Every industry has different margin expectations, and understanding where your business fits in can help set realistic goals and identify potential problems before they become critical. If this breakdown helped you understand the difference between gross and net profit, hit the subscribe button. At Maybe Money, we're uncovering the real numbers and concepts behind starting and running businesses. What are some other business topics you'd like us to break down? Let us know in the comments.